The views or opinions expressed on Ann Arbor Inclusive do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the City of Ann Arbor and the Commission on Disability Issues. For more information about the Ann Arbor Commission on Disability Issues, please visit a2gov.org/disability resources.
Hello everyone and welcome to Ann Arbor Inclusive. I'm Zach Damon. We have a wonderful show for you today as Kurt Sebaly, Executive Director of the Penrickton Center for Blind Children, joins us in studio. Kurt, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for inviting me and letting me talk a little bit about what we do.
Oh, no problem. It's a pleasure to have you. And if you don't mind, I'd just like to get the ball rolling.
Sure, absolutely.
All right. So the Penrickton Center was established in 1952 and is a private nonprofit 5-day residential and daycare agency serving blind, multi-disabled children ages 1 through 12. Now, I'm curious, what separates Penrickton apart from other centers for the blind?
Well, first off, we're the only agency in the state of Michigan that works exclusively with blind, multi-disabled children ages 1 through 12. No other program offers the services or the programs we offer in the state.
Is that right?
We receive no state, no federal, no United Way, no insurance, and there's no charge for our services. So everything is donated to Penrickton.
Wow.
And we have a lot of unique programs and services that a lot of places don't have access to. And we'll talk about that as we get into it a little bit later. But one of them is active learning. But we strive at getting our children to be as independent as they possibly can in terms of feeding, dressing, bathing, those types of skills. We run a 5-day residential program, like you mentioned, which means children live with us Sunday night through Friday afternoon. They live with us during the week, go home on weekends, holidays when they're ill. That program serves children from 2 hours driving distance. So we have children from Ann Arbor, Lansing, Toledo, and then the metropolitan Detroit area. So it's kind of unique.
Yeah, definitely unique. And I'm sure they develop tremendous relationships at Penrickton.
Yes.
Now, do those continue outside of the center?
Yes, when children come into our program, let's back up a little bit. With our children, when we talk about the ages 1 through 12, that's their chronological age.
Sure.
Developmentally, because our kids are going to have more than one disability,
Yeah.
they're going to be developmentally 3 years and younger. So work on things you take for granted, feeding, dressing, and bathing. But when a child does leave our program, they're not gone. They're always invited back for our parties. They can use our support services, that's our occupational therapists, our nurses, to help the family navigate the social systems in Michigan, unfortunately.
Well, and Kurt, I mean, all of that is extremely interesting because I think, as you mentioned, it's very important early on to teach a person, whether they are blind or have a disability or not, to be fully independent. And I think that is wonderful, the work that you guys are doing.
And you're absolutely right. The earlier the better.
Wonderful.
The earlier the better, so we can make a difference for the families.
Exactly right. I couldn't agree more. Each program, as you discussed, you have a lot of interesting programs. In each program at the center is individually designed to promote independence in all aspects of daily living. The Penrickton Center utilizes its experience and expertise to teach and serve families, children, and professionals through support services, education, and advocacy. And of course, that's from your mission statement of the center. But I'd like to ask you, in your own words, why is this mission important?
Well, it really goes back to our history, and I think that really sets up the tone. Our original founders were the Penmans, the Rickers, the Wigingtons.
Okay.
The Penmans and Wigingtons had blind children. Ricker was a mutual friend. They wanted their children involved in a daycare program. They're visually impaired at the time. This goes back in the 50s, but no program served blind children.
Sure.
So they said, you know what, we'll make our own daycare program. They met in their basement, then they used the fire hall, they used a church, and then in 1956, the city of Taylor donated the property we're on as a daycare program to serve blind children because no one else did that.
Yeah.
And that has evolved from daycare children to other children with other disabilities because, again, they were not receiving services. So our mission today is almost identical to what it was back in the 50s, is that we serve blind children with one additional disability, helping them become as independent as possible.
Well, and again, I think, you know, it's extremely interesting that you do serve students with other disabilities as well. Do you notice interaction, you know, with the students? Do you notice that it makes a difference in them early on?
Oh, absolutely. You see the differences with the children in a very short period of time. Part of it is because we have equipment and things available to families that no one else has in the state of Michigan. That makes a huge difference. Plus, we have the experiences with our occupational therapist, our social worker, activities director, plus all of our therapy programs, which hopefully you'll talk about.
We'll get there, don't worry.
Which allows us to get children to benefit and see them. It's interesting, some children, a lot of times visually impaired children, especially at a certain age, are loners, and we have that. But then as children develop, you see them do interactive play, which is fun to see and watch the children develop in doing that.
Well, and it's interesting you talked about early on, them feeling isolated. I mean, do you notice a difference as they go through the program, again, that they become less and less of loners when they go through
Again, that's the developmental process
Sure.
with some children. It depends on where they're at developmentally, but a lot of our kids, you can see that. We have a couple children in the program right now. They're, for lack of a better term, they're little chatterboxes. They talk all the time, which is fun because that's what they learn, and they get to do some interactive play.
Sure.
It doesn't happen with a lot of kids, but eventually you'll see that them develop that.
Sure.
So we're very pleased with that.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I think the work that you guys are doing, I mean, as you mentioned, I mean, it's just very, very interesting and fascinating to know about the Penrickton Center and how it evolved. I mean, in the 50s, from a basement all the way to what you guys have now.
Correct.
Is just amazing, the progression.
We're thrilled because, like I say, we started in a basement, then the church hall, then eventually we have 3 acres of property in Taylor. The building initially was built as a site project, and it was 8,000 square feet.
Oh, wow, okay.
There was a renovation in the 70s to 12,000 square feet, and now we're a 20,000 square foot building.
Oh, my goodness.
All of it through donations.
Wow, that is wonderful that
Yep.
people have donated and that you guys are continuing to make a great impact on the state of Michigan and in the disability community.
Yep.
And Kurt, I wanted to ask you too, because I always find this very interesting and fascinating. Did you always want to work within the disability community? I mean, what motivated you to work at Penrickton Center and become involved?
It's interesting. I don't have that as a driving force when I was going to school.
Sure.
But then what happened is I dropped off a resume just to see if they needed anything. At the time, Penrickton Center needed a social worker, but they really needed someone to run their education program.
Okay.
And I had that in my background. So I was really hired to get our children involved in special education programs because this is huge advantage for what we can do for our children.
Mm-hmm.
And like a lot of my staff, and I'll be very, very cognizant of that, they want to be there maybe for a year or two. They're going to job resume build and so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there almost 39 years.
Have you really? Wow.
Our assistant director has been with us for close to 30 years.
Okay.
And one of my childcare workers, she's been with us for close to 30 years. The activities director has been there for 39 years. I mean,
Sure.
so these people are dedicated because of 2 things. First off, you really have an impact on making a difference with children.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the progress you're making.
Right.
But you're also having an impact with the families. You're helping the child, you're helping the family, you're helping the growth. We want to, you talked about advocacy. We want our families, because we're not always going to be there. We
Right.
want our families to become advocates for their children and teach them how to become advocates with them. So it's very unique in how we do things. And lastly, you never know who's going to walk through the door.
Kurt, you're exactly right. I mean, what you touched on especially, I mean, the longevity of yourself and other staff. I mean, you personally, has working at the center, what personal impact has that made on you?
You really have you're really humbled because number one, you're very grateful for the generosity of many caring people. I have to say that because without a lot of groups and organizations and individuals, Penrickton Center does not exist.
Right.
And then when you have children, I have children myself, when they're born, you feel that impact of working with children who don't have disabilities and children who do.
Sure.
And I think one of the overriding philosophies that we have at Penrickton Center is that our children are children first. That's primary. And number one, we don't work on that negative aspect. We work on what can a child do, and we build upon that.
I love that. And I think, to me, in my opinion, that's definitely a good recipe for success. You don't focus on what someone can do.
No.
You focus on what their strengths are and build upon those. And I think that philosophy is spot on. And speaking of Penrickton Center, the Penrickton Center for the Blind provides many services to the blind and to the multi-disabled and their families. You talked about developmental programming. You have dance and movement as well. And you have therapy learning. And of course, you also have a program which I found very fascinating called active learning. And of course, active learning are techniques that emphasize, simple ways to change the environment so that a child becomes an active learner.
Correct.
So can you talk a little bit more about that, and what is an active learner?
Well, active learning is actually a program developed by Dr. Lily Nielsen.
Okay.
And our staff actually have trained with Dr. Nielsen before she passed away. And she's authorized our assistant director to lecture around the country. So we do this program called active learning where children become active for the very first time. And if you don't mind, I'll have you become an active learner.
Ooh, I'm excited.
Would you like to do that?
Yeah, we
All
should.
right.
Yeah, definitely.
So we'll do the first thing first.
Okay.
A lot of our children come into a program and we call it learned helplessness.
Okay.
So let me give you an example of that.
Sure, yeah, you've brought a couple
brought some
of things
all
for
right.
me.
So this is just a simple drumstick,
okay.
right?
You're sure?
Yeah, bang
Get
the
a shot of
but
this?
you can
Okay.
you can bang the drumstick and see what it does.
Okay, so we bang this here?
Yep. Oh, it turns on.
Oh my goodness. Okay, it lights up.
All right. So imagine your cup is a cymbal or a drum.
Sure.
So do that.
Okay.
So tap on that. Very good.
Okay.
All right. You're able to do that.
Yes.
Well, we had a little girl come into our program. She could do exactly what you were doing.
Sure.
But you know what she couldn't do? She couldn't hold a spoon to feed herself. We call that learned helplessness. Mom and Daddy, I can't do it.
Yeah.
So what happens is we want our children to be able to do things independently. Sure. She was able to hold a drumstick and bang it in our music therapy program. Sure. We know that you can hold that. There's no reason why you can't feed herself.
Yeah.
So within a month, she was feeding herself.
Right. Wow.
So that's an example. But now we'll get to more details.
Okay.
We have what's called non-learners.
Okay.
All right. A child is a non-learner. All right. You're going to be my child now. Okay.
Okay.
So close your eyes.
Okay.
Don't cheat.
I'm not.
All right. We're going to do an activity with you. Ready?
Okay. No peeking.
Here we go.
Okay.
That's close enough. What did you learn?
What did I learn?
Yeah, you can open your eyes now. In the last 10 seconds, what did you learn?
Trust.
You learned trust, but more important, you learned nothing. You didn't learn anything because I didn't give you anything to work with.
That's true.
You were waiting for an activity to do,
right.
And I never gave you that opportunity.
Sure.
So we want you to become an active learner. All right? So I'm going to close your eyes again.
Okay.
I'm going to give you a toy.
Okay.
This is a common everyday toy that you can buy.
Okay.
In front of you is a toy.
Okay.
Touch it, feel it. I want you to play with that toy.
Okay.
We'll count the ways you can play with that. Well, there's one. Well, there's two.
Okay.
2.5.
Wow. Okay.
Okay.
There's some bells.
What do little kids do with toys?
What do they do with toys? They experiment.
Yeah. What else do they do?
They.
What would you do if you were a little kid?
If I was a little kid.
You'd throw it on the floor.
I would throw it on.
Throw it on the floor.
Okay.
You can throw it. Okay. You can open your eyes. So now you were a passive learner. I controlled what you learned.
Right.
You had no choice. All right. And so what happens is I gave you a toy. It did about 4 things. You got bored with it. What do I do now? And now when you threw it, again, you're visually impaired. You're in a wheelchair. You can't pick the toy up. All of a sudden, you become a non-learner again.
Oh.
So we want our children to become active learners. All right. And we have toys and equipment to do this. And one of these pieces of equipment, close your eyes again.
Okay.
Is
this is so challenging, you guys. When you close your eyes,
this is a board. It's
Yeah.
called a comparison board. I'll give it to you in a second.
Okay.
All right. And so the comparison board allows children to compare and contrast objects, but it also allows them to touch and feel things. And if they drop something, you can't lose it.
Sure.
So Zach, I'm going to give this to you. Hang on a second. I'm going to
Okay.
put it in front of you. There's a board.
Okay.
It's called your own board. I want you to touch and feel those things
Okay.
and identify what they are.
All right.
You can tell me. That's fine.
We have a brush here.
Okay. Keep going.
We have another brush.
All right.
We have a whistle.
Very good.
We have a key.
No.
No.
You sure that?
Oh, it's a wrench.
What
It's a
size
wrench.
is that wrench?
What size is it? It's a miniature, some sort of
That's
small
all right.
wrench.
It's 3/8.
right?
That's okay. Keep
3/8.
going. You're doing good.
Okay. We have a egg whistle.
All right.
Is
Keep
that
going.
what this is? Egg whistle?
Just keep on going.
Okay. Okay, these are measuring spoons.
Okay. They're made out of?
Metal.
All right. Keep going.
Right. Boy, this could be challenging. And then this, what the heck? Some sort of feet.
Okay.
Some,
Keep going.
Some legs. Some
Okay.
Gumby.
There you go. Keep going.
Legs. Okay.
You got a couple more objects I want you to feel.
Then we have an arm, like a
right.
hand of that. Okay. All right. Then we have more plastic measuring
So now we're
spoons.
learning things. We're learning different textures and metals and so forth. What are
Right.
those things you're holding in your hand? Do you have any idea?
This right here?
Yeah.
This is actually a grinder for juice,
Okay.
or for fruit juice.
You can open your eyes.
Okay.
You did good. Most people do not know what that is in your hand.
Oh, wow.
And the only reason you know what that object is why?
Because I've used it.
You've used it, you have
Yes.
experience with it.
Yes.
A lot of our children don't know these textures or things.
Sure.
And so like initially you picked up the wrench, you
Right.
called it a key initially. But you're able to identify these objects because you have the opportunity to experience them.
Right.
And that's what we try to do, get our children to experience things firsthand as much as possible.
Now this is a doozy, though. I would have never guessed, you guys, a football-shaped whistle.
Yeah, we find different things, of course, for the
That's
kids to
right.
touch and feel.
Challenging.
And
Wow.
so that's a goal that with active learning, children become active by interacting with their environment.
Yeah.
So example, we talk about that, is getting our children involved in the community as much as possible.
Right.
You name a field trip, our kids have been there. Detroit Zoos, Toledo Zoo, hands-on museum out here, wave pool, water parks. We get our children to touch and feel things firsthand.
Have they been to the scrap box in Ann Arbor?
They probably have been. I think
Okay.
they have, yes.
Sure. Yeah, well, and the reason I bring that location up, folks, is because they have a bunch of recycled materials that are foam and different textures.
You can do different things with them.
Yep,
Absolutely.
definitely.
So I'll take your board
All
away
right,
from you. That
sure.
way you can keep on going.
All right.
Don't lose your paperwork.
No, don't want. Thank
There
you.
you
Wow, that is so interesting. My goodness, this is a lot of fun.
We're just getting there.
Okay. All right. So I'd like to ask you too, though.
Sure.
I mean, what in your mind, Kurt? I mean, working at Penrickton, what would you say are some of the biggest misconceptions about the blind community?
Well, I think some of the biggest misconceptions with the visually impaired community is that all the people who are legally blind are totally blind, when in fact that's only about 20% of the population.
Sure.
A lot of people who are legally blind have a lot of vision. They're just legally blind. So we have kids who are legally blind, and people, say, well, he can see. Well, yeah, he can see because he's legally blind, but he has some other disabilities.
Right.
So that's number one. Number two, that you can't use certain words about the visually impaired like see and wear and show and so forth. But those are common language terms, and so that's what
Okay.
you do. And I think that one of the other biggest misconceptions is that the visually impaired have super hearing and extraordinary hearing. But the reality is that it's like everybody else.
Okay.
That's a sense that they don't have the vision, so they rely on their other senses. They build that acuity
Right.
because that's how they live and breathe.
Right. Well, and
So-
it's like for myself, I use arm crutches to walk, because my legs aren't as strong as my upper
Right.
body. So what's happened is my upper body's become stronger than my lower extremities, thus,
Right.
helping to balance that out. So I would imagine it's
Yep.
similar,
It's very similar.
in the hearing
Yep.
aspect.
And we were actually just talking today, one of our children he's got some musical ability. He's autistic as well. And his musical ability, he can actually tune a guitar by ear.
Really?
Where a music therapist has to use a piece of equipment, he can tune it by ear. Wow. Which is just really impressive.
Yeah.
But he's also visually impaired as well as autistic. So.
Wow. No, but that is amazing. I mean, and what I found interesting too is that, the dance and movement therapy and being able to get them to move
Right.
and really feel their bodies and how it moves and how it controls and knowing space. I mean, I imagine that would be very, very tough, not being able to
And
see.
you touched on the very key words, knowing where they are in space.
Mm.
Because a lot of our kids, because of the developmental disabilities they have, may not know these things at the end of their arms are called hands, and where they are can cause them some effect.
Yep.
So our dance and movement therapist uses a lot of equipment and techniques to get our children to reach out, explore the world.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, we have a kettle drum. It's a steel drum they use for steel brass bands.
Oh, sure.
And we use that drum, not for the kids to touch, but they'll take beads and balls and ping pong balls and drop them.
Oh, wow.
That works on sound localization as well as grasping and working on the different grasps. So
Okay.
that's very important for them to do.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think it's very innovative, the techniques that you guys use.
We try.
And also, it has to be, I can tell that you try to make it fun for them.
Yep.
And something that is not taxing. A lot of times I think when younger kids go to school, it can be fun for a while and then it becomes taxing. But I think the activities that you try to...
We want to make
stuff.
it interesting for everybody to do things. And developmentally, it depends on where a child's at.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of our kids do not know that they're doing some cause and effect.
Sure.
And so, an example, I'll show you. We have
Okay.
a cause and effect toy. This is a little toy we have.
Look at that. Oh, she's dancing. Now,
Well,
do
what
we have
happens
do we have a name for her? What do we
Nah,
call
I
it?
don't know. It's a toy.
Okay.
But it's an adaptive toy that we do ourselves, and it has a little plate switch.
Okay.
And the idea behind the plate switch is that we want our teacher children to do some cause and effect.
Sure.
That they can do something. So if you can do the honors,
Ooh.
there you go. You just touch it, and it turns on. So they're motivated by that. They hear the sound and so forth.
Right.
But you touched on this as well. Some children get bored.
Right.
They learn very simple. And imagine you just spent $100 for that toy because it's been adapted, and then the child, after a few minutes, they learn it says, okay, what else now?
Yeah.
Well, what happens is we want to take it to the next level, so we have different toys
Okay.
that we've adapted so we can use a different type of switch. This is called a happy clown switch.
Happy clown switch.
And I'll just put it over here.
Okay.
And
Now,
so
now, do you adapt the toys, or is there
we
a
adapt
company
the
that
toys.
does this?
There's a
Okay.
company that does it out in New York.
Okay.
They'll charge you $100. We do it for free.
And get a
we-
shot of these guys. This is very interesting.
And
Yeah.
so this is a happy switch. So if you just play with the clown,
Sure.
you just got to move around,
Oh, wow.
and then you let go. He may take off, but that's all right.
That is so neat.
So the idea, you have to stop now.
Yep, yep. Sorry, I was distracted. Oh,
You'll turn off. Eventually.
okay.
So what happens though is our children, what will happen is our children, you play with this toy, they get bored with this, we have another toy that you can interact with. We have different objects and
Sure.
plush animals and so forth.
Sure.
But we also have, not only do we have it for our children at Penrickton Center,
Sure.
but we actually have a lending library for families. They can borrow the toys and switches for
Oh,
our
is that
kids.
right?
Absolutely. So
Wow.
we want to make it interesting for them.
Great. Now, do you guys, I'm curious, do you have workshops?
We don't have workshops. What
okay.
we do, well, groups and individuals can tour Penrickton anytime.
Sure.
And we want them to see what we do and how we do that. So
Okay.
we have schools coming in, and we do something that no one else does in the Downriver area. We do a lot of interactive groups for elementary, middle, high school, and college, university kids.
Okay.
So they can touch and feel and see that our children are children first.
Sure.
So groups and tours are always welcome, and we have interactive programs for them
Okay.
to do that.
Wonderful. And sort of moving forward, if we will,
Mm-hmm.
the Penrickton Center is located in the wonderful city of Taylor, Michigan. And being that that's not that far from us, I'm curious in your own words, you know, what is it about the Ann Arbor community that you really enjoy? And do you feel that Ann Arbor is a good city for young adults with visual impairments?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, every school or every city has the opportunity to do things independently. We're close enough to Ann Arbor that we can take our children here and do things with the city as well as some of the places you mentioned as well.
Yep.
And then we want our kids to be involved with the city. And we're local, but we also can have children come into our program.
Okay.
They can visit at any time and take our children out at any time. So that's
Sure.
what's interesting about the program.
Sure. And then the students, when they're with you, do they have dormitories or?
We actually have bedrooms.
Oh, okay.
All right, so we have 13 bedrooms. We put 1 to 4 children per room. We put boys with boys, girls with girls, quiet ones with quiet ones, loud ones with loud ones.
Okay.
More importantly, the bedrooms are used for one thing only, sleeping.
Okay.
That's it.
Wow.
That's all they're there for. We do every hour activities in our playroom, our therapy rooms, in our outside. We have 3 acres, so we have a huge playground for the kids to play.
Sure.
And then we have active programs, which we touched upon. We have adaptive horseback riding.
Wow.
We have an adaptive swim program through the Romulus Athletic Center. So it's real interesting for the kids to do.
No, that is awesome. And Kurt, this is probably a tough question for
Okay.
you because you've had a lot of great experience and have been with Penrickton for quite some time. But do you mind sharing one great memory you have of working at Penrickton?
Sure. One of our children, his name was Nicholas. He came in the program at age 3.
Okay.
He has cerebral palsy. He's legally blind. He actually has no eyes, so he's totally blind.
Wow.
He had no language, and his parents were told that they should place him in an institution because he's never going to do anything. But Nicholas came in the program, and you could see he had a lot of things going on. And he learned very quickly that most children, as all parents know,
Yeah.
they know what this means.
Yeah, yeah.
No matter what the kid is, they all know what no means.
Right.
But he couldn't say yes. He didn't know how to say yes. So we took his hands and actually talked to him and said, this is yes, because we knew he could do that. If you can have a yes-no conversation, you can do lots of things. You can communicate with the family.
Right.
So he was able to do yes and no. Do you want more milk? Yes. Do you want more dessert? No. You could do what you want. As he developed, his speech became a little bit slower coming along.
Sure.
But like other children, he would do this for yes. Then he got, like all children, yes. And then his latest was yes.
Okay.
And as time went on, he actually learned how to talk. He learned how to walk, became independent, went to school, was in the high school band.
Oh my goodness.
That's unusual for a lot of our children,
Sure.
but developmentally he was a huge success, and we're just pleased. And I still see Nicholas.
Oh, wonderful.
So.
And, well, Kurt, I mean, that is just an amazing memory and an amazing story. And I really appreciate you sharing that. And I think it says a lot about what you do and, of course, the great work that all the staff at Penrickton are doing. Lastly, for those viewers out there that are interested in working with Penrickton or bringing their child to Penrickton Center to see if it can help them, how can they reach you?
They can reach us by contacting us through telephone, 734-946-7500. Call and talk with our social worker. They can visit anytime. We don't need an appointment. We're on Eureka Road between Beechdale and Inkster, just east of the airport. You don't need an appointment Monday through Friday. Stop in. We want people to visit and tour. And lastly, we do have a website, and it's Penrickton, www.penrickton.com.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier, too, that the center really operates on donations. So if people out there would like to donate and contribute to Penrickton, is there a donation tab on the website?
There is a donation tab, and we're just like your home. Whatever you use at home, we use at Penrickton.
Okay.
So all of our toilet paper is donated, all of our paper towels, all of our food is donated. We can always use that as well.
All right, wonderful. Well, Kurt, thank you so much for being on
Well, thank you
the
for
show.
having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. And folks, I'd like to thank Kurt for being on the show, and thank you so much for watching, and hope that you enjoyed the program. Please be sure to tune into Ann Arbor Inclusive next month, and as always, stay awesome, Ann Arbor.